Welcome, it's wonderful being with you guys again. I heard you guys had a very great lock-in this last weekend. It sounded like it was a lot of fun. Yeah? That didn't sound like it was a lot of fun. Was it a lot of fun?
Yeah.
All right.
They're all still tired from it.
I see. Well, this morning, this is actually Palm Sunday, and thank you for having me here with you guys in this holy day where Jesus came in on a donkey to the cries of Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna. And this morning, I'm going to be continuing the series I started in January on Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. And this morning is actually going to be the second to last sermon that I share with you guys. As we look at the letter to the Corinthians that Paul writes, we see this major theme, this theme that Paul is trying to get the Corinthians to recognize the implications of their identity change. They're no longer at war with God, they're now sons and daughters of Him. They are part of God's kingdom. It's almost like Paul is this teacher that I kind of imagine him, especially from this letter, kind of pulling out his hair. I'm guessing that he's at this point a pretty bald man because of all the hair he has to pull out. With seeing these guys saying like, all right guys, you're sons and daughters of God, don't you get it? This is not how the sons and daughters of God ought to act. Don't you get it? You already have the ground of your dignity, the ground of your worth. You're God's children. You have all knowledge. You have all power. So why are you returning to the world and using the things of the world to gain your status, to try to leverage your difference as a way to make yourself feel that dignity which God has already given you by calling you His own? This morning we're going to be looking at, once again at the topic of sexuality. And we're going to see how Paul addresses yet again a wrongful approach to this issue within the body there in Corinth. So without further ado, we're going to return to this passage. This passage is taken from the chapter 7, which is a very long chapter. I only had you guys read the first 9 verses. It's 40 verses long, so it's a very, very long chapter. It touches a lot of different issues, but this morning I'm only going to be focusing on the issues of singleness, the benefits of singleness, and the issues of sex and marriage. I'm not going to be tackling Paul on divorce and separation and what happens when you have a partner who's not a believer, etc., etc., etc. So if you have your Bibles with me, would you turn again to 1 Corinthians chapter 7? We'll be starting in verse 1. And I'm going to be reading out of the New American Standard Bible. That's the version I'll be reading from. So if it sounds a little different, that's why. Once again, it's 1 Corinthians chapter 7, starting in verse 1. Now concerning the things about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. But because of the immoralities, each man is to have his own wife, and each woman is to have her own husband. The husband must fulfill his duty to his wife, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise also the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Stop depriving one another, except by agreement for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer and come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. But this I say by way of concession, not of command. Yet I wish that all men were even as I myself am. However, each man has his own gift from God, one in this manner and another in that. But I say to the unmarried and to widows that it is good for them if they remain even as I. But if they do not have self-control, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. Now I'm going to skip ahead in the chapter to verse 24 and read to the end. 1 Corinthians 7:24. Brethren, each one is to remain with God in that condition in which he was called. Now concerning virgins, I have no command of the Lord, but I give an opinion as one who by the mercy of the Lord is trustworthy. I think then that this is good in view of the present distress, that it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be released. Are you released from a wife? Do not seek a wife. But if you marry, you have not sinned, and if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. Yet such will have trouble in this life, and I am trying to spare you. But this I say, brethren, the time has been shortened, so that from now on those who have wives should be as though they have none, and those who weep as though they did not weep, and those who rejoice